Welcome to the Faith and Feelings podcast. My name is Taylor Joy, and I'm passionate about helping you untangle and honor your emotions, authentically practice your faith, and integrate both into your everyday life so that you can experience the goodness and delight that comes from living in relationship with yourself, God, and others. Thank you for joining me. Let's get started. The first draft of my manuscript for Stop Saying I'm Fine was due in December of 2021. I was in my first year of grad school, and I remember sitting at a Starbucks during Christmas break, writing the last chapter. It's a chapter titled Becoming Us, and it's all about community. I sat at my laptop, trying and struggling to find words for the beautiful, awkward, frustrating, funny, and complex process of cultivating deep relationships. So as we start a new series today, all about emotionally healthy relationships, I wanted to read a short excerpt from what I wrote that day in Starbucks. I wrote this: living in community is complicated. We're so used to skin-deep smiles and small talk that slow, messy, true community can feel foreign to us. I like my relationships to be tidy and predictable, and those qualities quickly unravel when we plunge beneath pleasantries and good eye contact. True community, deep and authentic connection, means bruised knees and sore muscles, steady patience and repetitive actions. It's a slow, not an instant love. It requires me to stay in the awkwardness, linger in the discomfort, and lean into the hard conversations with those who see all the worst parts of me. When the masks are peeled, I've quickly discovered that I'm fine is no longer a viable answer. People see the real me under all the packaging and charm and smiles, and they realize that I'm not quite as together as I seemed. Oftentimes, my mess triggers their own, and suddenly our insecurities begin arguing with each other. True community reveals how quickly I can get offended and how quickly I can offend others. It requires both confession and forgiveness, showing up, coming clean, being seen, and giving grace over and over again. It requires the self-awareness to see myself as I really am, to see others as they really are, and the humility to openly acknowledge both. It requires less advice and more understanding, less solutions, more empathy. Grace must always sit at the core of our shared experiences, cultivating a safe space where trust runs deep, truth is spoken, and people are fiercely committed to the growth of each other. This vision for community is one that is woven throughout the biblical narrative, one that Jesus models for us, and one that we were each designed to live in. But the question that I've been sitting with and that I've heard from so many readers over the last 4 years is this: how? How do we cultivate deep relationships? Why do we long for close, vulnerable community while also sometimes feeling afraid and avoidant? How do the relationships and patterns from our upbringing shape the way we interact with people today? And maybe most importantly, what does it look like to actually love well? Over and over again throughout the pages of Scripture, we see that the essence of true Christian spirituality is to love well. Love, not knowledge or gifts, is the only true measure of our spiritual maturity. And this requires that we experience deep connection with God, with ourselves, and with other people. Jesus always integrated the presence of God with the practice of loving people. In Matthew 22:37-40, he summarized the entire Bible for us in light of this. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it: love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. But here's the challenge that I've been sitting with as I've been preparing for this series. Loving God and loving people don't happen naturally. And loving God doesn't naturally translate into loving others. Commitment to a personal relationship with Jesus does not automatically equip us to love like Jesus. That requires intentional discipleship. And many of us were never taught how to do relationships in a way that's emotionally honest, mature, and deeply loving. We've often been discipled in knowledge, spiritual disciplines, and theology, but not how to navigate conflict, communicate with care, set healthy boundaries, or offer presence and empathy. our discipleship has often skipped over the emotional and relational component of our lives. So in this next series, we're going to get really practical. Next week, I'm going to be joined by my clinical supervisor, licensed therapist Carly Marculier, and we're going to unpack 8 skills over the next 8 weeks that are essential for developing emotionally healthy relationships. But this week, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about why. Why are these skills so very important for us to learn? Here's why. If we don't learn these skills and intentionally put them into practice, we will just repeat what we learned and what was modeled to us in our family of origin. What a lot of us don't realize is we don't just bring ourselves into community. We bring our whole families with us, meaning we all carry with us ways of being that were shaped, sometimes intentionally, sometimes without anyone realizing it, in our earliest environments. Our bodies learned these patterns at a deep, almost instinctive level through our experiences in our families of origin. And few things shape who we are today or who we're becoming more than the relational dynamics we were first immersed in growing up. Author and pastor Pete Scazzero once said, "Jesus may live in your heart, but grandpa lives in your bones." The grandpa in our bones is not necessarily good or bad. It just is. Our lives have shaped us. Our emotional and mental frameworks at this moment are the result of all the places we've been and what we've experienced. And when we're talking about our families of origin or the particular family system that we grew up in, what we're really talking about is our first formation, the earliest environment that shaped us. For most of us, our first 2 decades of life are the most formative. It's during this time that we learned what connection looks like, how conflict is handled, and who we need to be in order to belong. We absorb all kinds of relational patterns, some that serve us and some that helped us survive, but that don't serve us anymore. Because here's the thing, we carry that formation into adulthood, often without realizing it. If you've ever found yourself lying in bed after a family gathering, wondering, why did I get so upset? Or why did I act that way? Those moments reveal how deep our early wiring goes. We find ourselves acting and reacting in these ways, not because we don't know the right thing. It's not for lack of biblical knowledge. It's not because we don't desire something different. And it's not because we don't love God. It's because we have deeper patterns, subterranean scripts that are still at work within us. And this is where we need repatterning, a deeper transformation that cannot happen in isolation. It takes community to do this slow, awkward, healing work together. We need people who can walk with us, not just in therapy sessions or Sunday sermons, but in the in-between spaces, in the everyday stuff of life. Around the dinner table, in carpools, on walks, spaces where we can practice new ways of being. Pete Scazzero offers a framework for understanding 4 stages of emotional maturity within relationships: the emotional infant, the emotional child, the emotional adolescent, and the emotional adult. So before we begin unpacking 8 skills for emotionally healthy relationships next week, I wanted to wrap up this episode by briefly walking through each of these stages together. Having a framework for emotional maturity like this gives us a baseline, a starting point for honest self-reflection. It helps us name where we are right now, not as criticism or judgment, but as a mirror to help us reflect on what growth might look like. So as you listen, stay curious. No one lives fully in just one category. We move in and out depending on stress, relationships, and what's happening in our lives. But this framework can help us name patterns that may be shaping our lives and relationships in ways we may not be fully aware of. So let's walk through each of these stages together. These descriptions are taken from Pete Scazzero's book on emotionally healthy relationships. The first stage is the emotional infant. Here's how Pete describes this stage. I often have difficulty in describing and experiencing my feelings in healthy ways and rarely enter the emotional world of others. I am consistently driven by a need for instant gratification, often using others as objects to meet my needs. People sometimes perceive me as inconsiderate and insensitive. I am uncomfortable with silence or being alone. When trials, hardships, or difficulties come, I want to quit God and the Christian life. I sometimes experience God at church and when I am with other Christians, but rarely when I am at work or home. Next is the emotional child. When life goes my way, I am content. However, as soon as disappointment or stress enter the picture, I quickly unravel inside. I often take things personally, interpreting disagreements or criticism as a personal offense. When I don't get my way, I often complain, withdraw, manipulate, drag my feet, become sarcastic, or take revenge. I often end up living off the spirituality of other people because I am so overloaded and distracted. My prayer life is primarily talking to God, telling Him what to do and how to fix my problems. Prayer is more of a duty than a delight. Third, we have the emotional adolescent. I don't like it when others question me. I often make quick judgments and interpretations of people's behavior. I withhold forgiveness from those who sin against me, avoiding or cutting them off when they do something to hurt me. I subconsciously keep records on the love I give out. I have trouble really listening to another person's pain, disappointment, or needs without becoming preoccupied with myself. I sometimes find myself too busy to spend adequate time nourishing my spiritual life. I attend church and serve others, but enjoy few delights in Christ. My Christian life is still primarily about doing, not being with Him. Prayer continues to be mostly me talking, with little silence, solitude, or listening to God. And finally, we have the emotional adult. I respect and love others without having to change them or becoming judgmental. I value people for who they are, not for what they can give me or how they behave. I take responsibility for my own thoughts, feelings, goals, and actions. I can state my own beliefs and values to those who disagree with me. I am able to accurately self-assess my limits, strengths, and weaknesses. I am deeply convinced that I am absolutely loved by Christ and do not look to others to tell me I'm okay. I am able to integrate doing for God and being with Him. My Christian life has moved beyond simply serving Christ to loving Him and enjoying communion with Him. Which of these descriptions felt most familiar to you? Where do you see signs of emotional growth in your life? And where do you notice yourself getting stuck? And how have your relationships been shaped by your level of emotional maturity? As we wrap up today, I'd invite you to spend some time reflecting on these questions. Remember, this is not about shaming ourselves or arriving at perfection. It's about naming where we are, welcoming the truth with compassion, and taking small, intentional steps towards maturing love. I'm so grateful that you listened to today's episode. Thank you for spending time with me. I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on Instagram at TaylorJoy or through my website, taylorjoymurray.co. Also, if you enjoyed this conversation, it would mean so much to me if you took a minute to subscribe and review the podcast. This is an easy way to partner with me and is invaluable in reaching new listeners. Until next week.